Now let's see example with the configuration also, right? Configuration example also, as we understand that all other stereotypes are helpful to create controllers. For controller at the rate controller, for service at the rate service, for repository at the rate repository, and for validation kind of stuff we are using component. So if you consider this is your application, okay, we used to send the UI request to controller. So to help to read data from front end, we use a controller class, and for all business related operations, we use service class, and then for CRUD operations, we use repository class. And component is like a helper, maybe your service helper class. It may use for validations or any other utility stuff. And for integrations, you have message queues, or you have database, or you have some third party applications. To make call to them, right, first we need to do the integration with that particular system. If you have a message queue or DB, or some REST API you have here, I want to call them. So if you want to call them, first you need to integrate with them. Okay, so to integrate with the database, we know simple driver manager dot get connection can establish integration between both your application and database. Between your application and database, we can use JDBC driver manager dot get connection. But as you know, that will create lot of problem, right? When you have users request from UI direct to JDBC, if you use, it will create lot of problems there. So to avoid that, you can use connection pool concept. So you can create connection pool. That is the integration part between your database and application. All that integrations you need to do under configuration class using @b annotation. You need to put one method here with required return type. Let's say if it is connection pool, data source is a return type. Data source dot create connection pool. Something, this is my method. Here you need to put the code and finally return data source object. That is what you need to do as part of your code. So this is integration for database. Same way if you want to integrate with REST API, you need one REST template here. So that integration also you can do here. Create REST template and return it finally. So when this code will be executed, when this @bean methods will execute, means whenever you start your application, as usual, controller objects will be scanned and created. Service objects also will be scanned by your IOC and created. Repository objects, component objects, and your configuration object. Along with them, IOC container will call these methods, whichever methods you have, connection pool or create REST template. All @bean methods also will execute, and whatever you returned as a value here, right? That values it will register into IOC along with your controller, service, repository, component, configuration objects. It will register this data source and REST template objects also. So now all objects are registered into IOC. Now wherever you need them, you can auto-wire them. Let's say this data source object I need inside repository class. No problem, you auto-wire it. Use @auto-wire annotation. @auto-wire annotation here. @auto-wire annotation you can use here, and you can auto-wire your data source. So now data source is available for your repository class. If you need REST template somewhere in your service, you can auto-wire it, or somewhere in your controller, you can auto-wire it. Okay. So instead of using configuration, if you use component here, then entirely it will change the behavior component or controller or service, any other annotation apart from configuration. The entire behavior of at the rate bean will change. I mean, at the rate bean is not useful apart from configuration class if you place it under any different class like controller or service or repository. No use of at the rate bean. During your container startup, it may create these objects or it may not, and if somebody try to call these methods intentionally, it will create, not may. When you start your application without configuration annotation, if you put here component, these beans will execute it during startup. And whenever some, if developer intentionally or unintentionally, if we call this cp method, then again and again it will execute for every user request. But the basic idea is this method should execute only one time. Intentionally, if you try to call it also, it will not execute this method when you configured your at the rate bean inside configuration class. But when you do this inside any other class than the configuration class, the entire behavior, it changes. So let me show you the application to make you realize. Here I have a DAO class. It want to do save operation from connection pool and one save operation from JDBC also to show you the difference. Now I need data source here. So this data source I auto wired in my repository, and who will auto wire it? Your IOC only. From where it will create this object first means inside configuration class. Inside configuration class, I created data source object, basic data source, and setting my driver class name, URL, username, passwords, and how many maximum connections I need, and what is the maximum waiting time. If users already reached to 19, the remaining users will be put into queue for the next 2 seconds. So meanwhile, your objects will be um, free in connection pool. That objects will be given to next users. So either you can use at the rate configuration or at the rate Spring Boot application for your at the rate beans. At the rate Spring Boot application you can see in Spring Boot concept. Okay. So at the rate Spring Boot application also is having configuration capability. Only these two annotations. Apart from these two, nothing else is recommended and not useful also. Okay. Yeah. Hmm. It will create two objects, two data sources. No, intentionally you are creating. Maybe one data source is with Oracle and one data source with MySQL. Okay. If you have such, requirement, then you need to at the rate being with a name. You need to mention a name here. Mention a unique name. So maybe this is like a Oracle connection, and this is like a MySQL connection. And during auto wiring, mention this name qualifier here. While auto wiring it, right? Maybe use at the rate qualifier. Here you specify your qualifier bean name. So what it will do, rkill connection only will be auto wired here. And in my requirement, I have MySQL connection also for some other DAOs. Use that wherever you need by qualifying it. Okay. So you can have any number of beats, but similar data type return value you have. So container will confuse. It can create it for you because two different naming conventions you use. It will create them, but during auto wiring it will confuse. It will ask you, you created two connections. Which one I should inject here, Arcle or MySQL? I'm confusing it. So it's your duty to resolve it. It will say it's your duty to resolve. So you need to use qualifier concept in that case to resolve the auto wire confusion when it have two different objects with the same type. Okay. Yes, automatically during your application start itself, these methods will be executed. These methods will be executed during your application startup itself. Let's see that. So I'll try to call this app config intentionally. So what is happening here in this code? I have app config object, and this app config is having at the rate two bean methods: create connection pool method, create rest template methods. This method should execute during my application startup only, means at line number 17 itself. So let me put debug pointer here and run it. Debug as Java application. So line number 17 I am executing. While execution of line number 17, I configured one more debug pointer here in this create connection pool and here in rest template also. See, my application is at starting. Still it is starting here in this line. So during startup itself, it is calling your create connection pool method. I didn't mention anywhere call this create connection pool, but you mentioned at the rate bean, that's why it is calling it automatically. Now rest template method also executing. So these two methods executed at line number 17 itself. Your two methods executed. So your connection pool is also executed, rest template also executed along with your app config. Okay, fine. So I'm getting my app config object here. Go to next line. So I received app config object, fine. Now using this app config, I am trying to calling this create connection pool method intentionally. Okay. Now when I execute this line number 21, actually what it should do, your cursor should go inside here and it should show this execution. When I click step over, right, what it should do, it should go inside. But instead of going inside, what it is doing, it is just skipping your execution, method execution, and coming to the next line. So it returned you one data source here, and one more data source here, and one more data source here. Three data source has it returned without executing your method itself. From where it got that object? Because already your object is created by container. Now this method is behaving like a factory method and returning the same object to you, whatever it is created already. So when I compare this DS1, DS2, it is saying true. It is saying true. Your DS1 and DS2 are same, and DS2, DS3 also same. Means same object only I am returning it to you. App config it is returning to you same object without executing this method. This method behave like a proxy method. So if you see this class also, right, app config class, it created app config enhanced by czlib. This is not your class name. It changed your class name entirely. App config dollar enhanced by czlib. Something happened internally. This is not your class. If it is your class, it should have executed this method. Your class is proxied. One proxy class created by Spring container. So when this proxy is executing, it is not really executing your method. Already objects are created and sharing it with you. That's it. So when you use at the rate configuration with at the rate beans, right? Container will execute that at the rate beans during your config object creation itself, and all your app config object itself will behave like a proxy. So when it try to execute these methods, right, these methods will behave like a factory methods inside proxy class. These are the factory methods. It will never execute them even if you try to call intentionally. So see, that's why rest template object also, it is returning same rest template. But instead of using configuration or Spring Boot application, if you go with a different annotation, consider it is like a controller or component, any other annotation if I use by mistakenly. Now see the behavior. The entire behavior will get changed. Debug as. Line number 17 I am executing. So execute it. Okay. While executing your container connection pool object it is creating, and REST template object also it is creating. So this line is executed. As usual, your config object executed, connection pool REST template executed. Now when I asked for app config object, it returned you one app config object. When I see this app config object, earlier it is a proxy object. Now I can see it is a plain object, app config only. I don't see enhanced by CZ proxy. It's a simple class only. It is returning you simple class as it is. Now using this simple class object, when I execute my methods, again it is going inside connection pool method. Earlier see, even this step is not executed. Now it came inside and again one more connection pool object created. One more time connection pool executed. Again and again I call three times. So three connection pools created. And it is saying that three connection pools are not same. Three different pools created. Why unnecessarily? REST template also. Three REST templates created. So when I call intentionally my methods, what it is doing, it is executing them like a method only. So when it is executed like a method, your configuration is completely wrong. Your configuration, it should have executed one time, but it executed multiple times. So your application behavior entirely changing. So a bad way of code execution happening here because I mistakenly added a component annotation. So component or other annotations are dangerous with @bean. So @bean should always should part of configuration or it should be part of your Spring Boot application. Okay. So then only your methods, your configuration methods are safe. Though intentionally people call it also, the behavior it will not change. Singleton object only it will return. So one connection pool only will serve to the entire application. One REST template only will serve to the entire application. Or else it will be creating every time new connection pool. So as architect, I thought of creating one connection pool and utilize for the entire application. But mistakenly, if somebody put instead of configuration here component, right, the application behavior entirely goes wrong. Whereas 1 lakh users need to execute for 1 minute, it may not even execute one or two people. So I can see that performance difference. Now let's see the example also. Now I'll try to auto wire. Yeah, go. When we use component, when we use config, what happened? It is executed, app config is executed with container only one time, and this methods also executed, okay, while using configuration. So though intentionally if you try to call that configuration methods, @bin is a configuration method. Here also this @bin is a configuration method. Configuration methods blindly should execute one time only. You should not execute them every time. During your application startup only your configurations code should execute. When I use when I use my @bin configuration methods with the configuration annotation, though if somebody intentionally call it also, it will not execute that methods multiple times. If I run this code, you can see app config object created, connection pool object created, REST template object created. Only one time that code executed. Connection pool and REST template code. Though I call that methods three times extra here. Create connection pool method intentionally I am calling. So when I call this method, what should have happened here? This code should have executed, but that is not happening here. This line number 18, 19, 20 not executing. Not executing means this line is executing and not going inside this method. As soon as you given this name, it is understanding, okay, this user needs a data source object, let's return it. How it is returning it? Actually, my method should have executed. Why it is not executed? Because your configuration class is mentioned with at the rate configuration. So container will keep your methods safe. What it did, it created a configuration class proxy object. That proxy is a factory method. That proxy will create this create connection pool as a factory method. Though you intentionally call 100 times also, it will not execute the inside code every time. Whatever object created like a singleton object, right? Your connection pool object, that same object only it will return to you. But when you use instead of configuration a component annotation, it cannot apply that. It cannot apply that behavior. It will think like this is a simple class and these are the simple methods. The factory implementation proxy may not apply to your methods. So your methods will be executed if user try to call intentionally. Your methods will be executed multiple times and multiple times your objects will be created. Integration objects. So creation of multiple integration objects are not good. So you can see every time new different data source object you received, so you are seeing that all that objects are not same, which means your objects created three times connection pool or rest templates. This is the proof. Did you understand that? So always careful with configuration. Whenever you see at the rate beans, you should see them either inside configuration class or at the rate Spring Boot application class. Nowhere else. Okay, at the rate bean you should not see it in other stereotype annotated classes apart from configuration or Spring Boot application. Okay, mostly we use configuration. Sometimes you may see at the rate beans in Spring Boot application. People used to put it in Spring Boot application also. Spring Boot at the rate Spring Boot application also is a type of configuration only that we will discuss in Spring Boot. Okay, now we will see that in Spring Boot concept. Now here, now my configuration class created data source. Can I auto wire it wherever I want? This data source is particularly required in my repository classes. Can I auto wire means yes. All at the rate bean, all at the rate bean objects you can auto wire. All at the rate bean objects whichever you created, right? You can auto wire them to utilize wherever you want. So I wanted to use it in my DO class, so I auto wired it. And I have a method here save, which is saving ID name email into some table. Okay, Spring Boot microservices table I have. In this Spring Boot microservices table, let me see how many records I have. I have overall 10 records or something. Let me see the count. 18 records I have. So for every student, I am saving ID, name, email. Okay. Now here, I'll be saving it SBMS. Insert into SBMS, ID, name, email. I am saving it here. Same without a data source using simple connection also I am doing it by opening the driver and connection to show you the difference. Okay, if your DAO class implemented with the JDBC, see how it will behave. If your DAO implemented with connection pool, see how it will behave. The performance different you can observe here now. Okay, now let me comment it. Okay. Here I am getting student to DAO object from my application context and trying to saving the records. Here I'll save 18 people are already there. From number 19 I will insert. So I'm using a for loop here. Inside for loop, I will call my DAO save method. DAO dot save. Save is using connection pool concept. So every time I'll increase this ID and save it here. So from ID 20 onwards, the data will be saved with the same name, same email with the different IDs. So see the time frame, how much time it will take. If you have watch, right, you can observe it, or you may put logger also here to observe it. Run it. So within very fraction of seconds, maybe the execution completed. And earlier 18 records I have. Now that count went to 1018. 1018 records got inserted. Very less time it took. Seamlessly it executed. Not even single exception you saw, right? Very, very less time. Let's say 10,000 records I will insert. 10,000 records from 1018 onwards. 1019 onwards. 10,000 times I will insert. I will open what it is, stopwatch, and I'll be starting it. Stopwatch when I start it. Start. Still red button I see means it is running. 1000 records getting inserted. Still red button is on. Yeah, now it stopped. So it took 16 seconds to insert 1000 records. Less than 15 seconds. 10,000 records got inserted. Less than 15 seconds. Earlier the count is 1018. Now the count is 11,018. 11,018 records got inserted. 10,000 records got inserted within 15 seconds only. Those are the same code I'll execute 11, 0, 18, right? From 19 onwards I will insert. Only for 1000 times only. Okay, only for 1000 times I will use here simple JDBC code. Save with the JDBC. Simple JDBC code. That is also properly I implemented. Opening connection to close connection. You may see this code. Save JDBC. Properly I opened connection and I created statement. And as usual I closed my connection also. Okay. So just for 1000 times I want to insert using JDBC. JDBC. Yes, simple JDBC only using and see the behavior. Run it. 11 times, 12 times, 22, 20, after 30. Gone. After 30 inserts, listener refused the connection following error saying that no appropriate service handler found, blah blah blah. Means database is, you know, saying that no more connections with me because you utilized. I utilized and I closed, but your for loop is executing super fast, right? Within that time, your connection, not opened properly and closed it. Close connections not received instantly because to open connection and to close connection it will take a lot of time. To insert 30 records itself, I am seeing so much difficulty here. Whereas for 10,000 records, seamlessly that was executed with connection code. Okay. So lot of performance changes if you will see if you go with the connection pool. Okay, always remember it. Okay, use connection pool rather than the direct JDBC connection. If somebody is using JDBC connection means their code is a standalone application code. Maybe for simple one singular, mission code. Maybe one user only hitting always. In such case, they might not have worries. But if your application is a web or any enterprise application which you are expecting multiple hits, obviously you need connection code. No other option. Okay, it's a beautiful concept actually. So practice this example also and this. From tomorrow, JDBC concept I will start. Okay. Today I have little bit work. I need to close the session. Tomorrow we will start from JDBC. Okay. So session will be started by uh, 8 p.m. only, if that is fine with you. Okay. I'll start the session by 8 p.m. Sorry, a.m. and we can continue till 9:30 or 10. Going forward, all our JDBC ORM concepts 30-40 minutes may not sufficient. Okay. Are you all fine to join? That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'll take it granted. Okay. So the same link will be started by 8 a.m. I'll update it in group also, and videos I'll upload today, and along with video this example also I'll upload there. So you all these examples I'll attach, so you can download and look into these examples as well. Okay. Yeah. So I'll be yeah, I'll update.